I'm Gab. He's Robbo. That's right. Stewart, Ian, Robson, Juls still on vacation. Understandably, it's a school holiday. The man's got a busy schedule. But hey, it works out fine, Robbo, because you're going to help us do our traditional annual pre-Champions League final tactical breakdown of the game. We're going to talk about that in our main time, but there's so much else going on, of course. Flick confirmed, Kompany confirmed, Enzo Maresca about to be confirmed. Tons going on out there, and even a nasty legal dispute, apparently, reportedly, according to L'Equipe, between Kylian Mbappe and Paris Saint-Germain. 160-odd million in the balance. I guess I'd even hire a lawyer, much as I don't like them, if I felt somebody owed me 160 million. But Robbo, let's get into this. Real Madrid and Barcelona. Just off the top, Barcelona. Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund.
You'd like it to be Barcelona against Real Madrid, wouldn't you?
That might be a better story. On paper, I think there's no question. Real Madrid, overwhelming favorites.
Yep.
Are we missing a trick here? I mean, I'll ask you the percentages at the top, and then maybe I'll ask you again after the tactical preview and see if. But there's a reason that they're overwhelming favourites, yeah?
Yeah, the whole of the season they've been superb in La Liga. They've been very good in the Champions League as well. They've had one or two games. I thought Leipzig, they didn't play particularly well. I didn't think they played that great against Manchester City. They were dominating in terms of possession and they counter-attacked quite well. But over the course of the season, Real Madrid have found a way to win games, but most of the time they've played some great football. They've got a pattern of play that you see week in, week out. They know exactly what the manager wants. When they bring players in, they can just adjust to it quite easily. And whenever I've seen Dortmund, I've been to Germany many times with Derek Ray to do the commentaries on games, Dortmund have been a fairly poor, or very average side, I would say, in Bundesliga, and a very average side in the Champions League as well. And they've just performed well on a couple of occasions.
And I think also they've undergone so many iterations this year, right? Especially at the front end, so many different combinations of forwards. Obviously, we expect full crew, Adeyemi and Sancho to start, but Sancho only arrived in January. In the mix, you've had Daniel Malen, you've had Marco Reus, you've had a whole bunch of different players. It's almost like he's tried to put the puzzle together, and it hasn't quite worked. And at the back as well, let's not forget, because Hummels and Schlotterbeck, they've essentially rotated with Süle.
Süle's hardly got a look in recent times.
In recent times, no, he's settled on his two. If we were to play the combined 11 game, let's ask you this, put you on the spot. If it was a combined 11, is it out of the likely starting lineups, how many Dortmund players get in?
If I was picking the side, it would be all Real Madrid, I'm afraid.
11-0.
I would say 11-0. There's not one player in the Dortmund side that I think would get into Real Madrid's team.
I have a soft spot for Ian Maatsen, so I might consider that over Ferland Mendy.
Yeah, maybe touch and go. That's about the only one I would say.
Yeah, and if it were cross-country skiing, I'd probably take Rierson over Danny Carvajal. I imagine he's better at it.
Yeah, probably.
In terms of lineups, there's very few doubts. It looks like he's going to play the 11 on the Dortmund side that knocked out Paris Saint-Germain.
And that's been his main team for a little while now.
We say that. That's a team that did well against Paris Saint-Germain, that kind of saw out the season.
The one player that sort of comes in and out is Julian Brandt. He was in for one game, then he comes back in for another, and then he's out for a game, because I don't think he trusts him. He's a good player, but I don't think Terzic trusts him defensively, and he can give the ball away cheaply. But he's also their most exciting player when he's playing well. So he's the one player that you can sometimes feel he might not be picked.
On the other end, Chouameni, he's along, but there's no way he's going to start with a muscular injury, right? It's not something you would risk then coming off. So we think it's going to be Camavinga.
And he was the key player to whether he was going to play centre half, which means Nacho wouldn't have been in the side, or whether he plays central midfield and then Camavinga wouldn't have been in the side. So Chouameni was a key player for them, but he's not going to play, don't he?
Eder Militao, Courtois we know will be in goal, especially with Lunin apparently having picked up the flu. But we know that because Courtois started like the last 5 games. If we take the last Real Madrid game as an indication of what he's planning for the final, it looks like it's gone Nacho ahead of Eder Militao.
Absolutely. Nacho has to play. Militao hasn't been good. Since he's been back from his injury, he's looked slightly off the pace. He's looked nervy in terms of 1v1 situations.
I'm still floored that when you do your combined 11, it's 11-0 for Real Madrid. I mean, when we had Manchester City and Inter last year, I think we had it at 8-3. I mean, there were a couple Inter players who got into the side. And last year's Inter team probably they got to the final, but it's not like they won the title or anything in Serie A. So I find this really interesting because everything points to, and Real Madrid and Manchester City are a pretty good team, right? We're a pretty good team last season. So I find this aspect interesting. So this being the case, if you were Edin Terzic and you're sitting here and you're saying, all right, all of their players, Robbo says all of their players are better than all of my players. Gab is nice enough to maybe give us Maatsen over Mendy, even though they're completely different players. So whatever, it kind of depends on what you want from your left back. What's my game plan going to be? Because if I can sit back, I can try to go and attack, which is what I like to do in theory. But if I do that, what happens to my defenders against Vinicius?
Well, they've got a problem, Borussia Dortmund, because whenever I've seen them play this season and they've tried to play high up the field, they've had a problem. Even the first game of the season against Cologne, who were relegated in the end, Cologne, every time they broke forward, looked as though they were going to cause Hummels and Schlotterbeck and Emre Can problems. Because that's the two centre-halves and the holding midfield player. They can't outrun. Schlotterbeck is a gambler. Hummels has to gamble now on making challenges. Sometimes he'll look a great player, but it's because he gets okay with his gambling. Because he knows he can't run, so he'll dive in, he'll try and make interceptions. So they are vulnerable to anything that's, when there's space in behind them, they're vulnerable to the counter-attack.
But Schlotterbeck can, out of the three, he can move the best.
He's okay pace-wise, but he's not very quick. And he has to lunge in and make last-ditch challenges. And I don't think he's got a great understanding with Hummels. I've seen, if you go back to their performance against Atletico Madrid, the first 35 minutes, how Borussia Dortmund are still in the Champions League after that first 35 minutes against Atletico Madrid, when they did defend slightly deeper, but they were still all over the place. And I think he can't allow, you talked about Maatsen being quick, but Maatsen likes to run forward. I think he's got to be more disciplined. I think the same with Rierson. He's got to be more disciplined to start with, because if they try and get their two fullbacks high and they play with Emre Can as the holding midfielder, and those two centre-halves I'm talking about, they will be cut open by Rodrigo and Vinicius Junior on the counter-attack. There's no doubt about it.
So I watched them. I watched Borussia Dortmund in person twice this season against, and both times they did well, against Paris Saint-Germain at the Parc des Princes and against Milan at the San Siro, where they won. In both situations, they obviously were, because they were more defensive and tried to hit on the counter. And maybe there's some parallels too, because in both situations they're facing, I think a forward who's incredible one-on-one, right? Mbappe, Rafael Leao, and they'll be facing Vinicius here. They got Sabitzer to come over and help out and help Rierson out. And in both situations, that game plan kind of worked, right? Mbappe was kept as quiet as you can keep him. Leao,
and you've just mentioned a player there, Sabitzer. Against Atletico Madrid, in the first game, he played alongside Emre Can as the holding midfield player and didn't do a particularly good job. The second game, he almost played as another centre-forward. So they had two players making forward runs, and they just left Emre Can in there. And he played much better. He was a real threat. So he's key to the way Borussia Dortmund are going to play. Is he going to be that forward-thinking player that's going to make forward runs, or is he going to be, as you just said, be on the right-hand side of a holding two and help out his fullback Rierson when he goes forward? So he's a key player for them straight away.
So, but is the thinking then on the balance of probabilities, you go more defensive? You do not. You have to do that, right?
And you have to do that, and they'll then have to rely on Sancho being at his very best and Adeyemi on the other side being at their very best. And they will swap over sides at times.
And there is a lot of pace there.
They've got pace.
Because obviously Nacho's had a phenomenal season. He's older. Rudiger, an even better season. But again, Rudiger's not the sprinter he was when he was younger. It's more about brains and physicality with Rudiger now. And obviously, Carvajal, we presume he's going to start at right back. Again,
who never really plays there now. When he's playing at right back, because they've got such a good understanding, he ends up being the furthest forward player on the right-hand side. Valverde tucks in, and Toni Kroos keeps hitting the big diagonals. So there's always space in behind Carvajal.
Defensively, when Dortmund attack or when Dortmund break, if we presume Carvajal's up the pitch, it's going to have to be. I mean, it's going to have to be Valverde coming over and covering it, or Camavinga covering that space.
It'll be more Camavinga. It'll be more. Sometimes it'll be Rudiger coming across, and Camavinga will go back into the centre half position. That's what happens quite a lot.
Right. And I don't know. You want to leave Camavinga 1-on-1 with Füllkrug, just in terms of physicality, right? So I'm trying to give Dortmund hope. I'm trying to find little things that you can exploit. If you can do that, you can maybe get a better matchup, right?
The two wide players, if the game plan is to work and it's a more defensive game plan, the two wide players for Borussia Dortmund have to be at their very best.
I want to bring up the subject of superstition a little bit. Okay, I know Adeyemi's been good the last couple months. But this is a guy who went nearly a year not scoring or whatever. You have other options. You have Daniel Malen, who, I thought I didn't like him when he joined Dortmund, and then I liked him a lot, and then he lost his place on the side. Does it have to be Adeyemi because of his pace?
It doesn't have to be him.
Could he spring a surprise? Would you spring a surprise? Would you go with Malen? Okay, Malen is a more technically gifted player.
Yes, but I think
Adeyemi's faster, but he's not that much faster.
I think he'll stick with the team that he's been playing recently.
But is this because coaches say, hey, it's name broke, don't fix it, that kind of thing?
That sort of thing, yeah. And he'll think, well, we've got a settled side now. The players, we've got to this far. Just keep it going. I'm sure he's going to play Adeyemi one side, Sancho, and they will keep swapping sides. They do that throughout the games I've seen so far. But they've also got a problem. He played well against PSG. Every time I've seen Füllkrug play this season, and I'll say it, he's been absolutely hopeless with his back to goal. So if you want to play counter-attacking football and you get the ball into your front player, he's got to hang on to it. He's got to allow players to join him. He's got to try and switch the play when it comes to him.
Füllkrug, Nicholas, if you're watching, don't worry, because every time I've seen you play in person, and I will be there at Wembley, you've played really well. You said you played well against Paris Saint-Germain, played very well against Milan at the San Siro. So who knows? Maybe I will prompt the Füllkrug effect.
Well, I'm hoping he plays well because I'm sure there's a good player in there. He could be Germany's centre forward, so he must be a decent player.
I mean, I actually think his all right. I hope God doesn't strike me down immediately for saying this. I'm about to draw a comparison with Olivier Giroud, not in terms of looks. Obviously, Giroud is far more handsome. Not in terms of technical ability. Obviously in terms of physicality, but also in terms of awareness of the people around him. I was really struck by, when he's up against defenders who are quicker or whatever, he has an ability to put himself, again, when you see this live, very dragging players out of position, getting to the sense where he can be an assist man as much as he can be a finisher, which I was not expecting in the games I've seen, because that's certainly the label of him is just, oh look, big lump, Nicholas Füllkrug.
Yeah, well, I saw him play in the very first game of the season before he came to Dortmund. That was against Bayern, and he actually played well. He won a lot of balls in the air from kicks longer. Then I saw him play for Dortmund on, I think it was 4 occasions, where Edin Terzic didn't know which way to turn. He kept on throwing his arms up in there because every time it went into him, he lost control. He tripped over it, and they just couldn't play off of him. Even when they had the good performance where they beat Bayern in Munich, he was their worst player by a mile. But then he plays against PSG, scores a good goal, and he looks a much better player. So hopefully we see the best of him.
All right, let's focus on Real Madrid a little bit, because let's face it, we've talked a lot about Dortmund so far. The first thing is, if you're Ancelotti, is your message to your players, okay, these are areas that we can exploit? Or do you say, you know what, you guys know what to do. We can do things naturally. If I give you things, put things in your head, Dortmund have so many weaknesses potentially that we can explore. We are so much better. Robbo said that none of their players would get into our starting 11. That we're just better off playing our game, and then maybe we can tweak things as the game unfolds or develops.
Yeah.
In case they throw some curveballs at us.
Yeah, I've seen.
Is that his message, or does he tweak things to try to exploit?
I don't think he tweaks that much. I've seen Real Madrid play most times this season. I've commentated on nearly every game they've played, and they've got a pattern of play. Sometimes they might defend a little bit. They're not worried if the opposition have plenty of ball in and around the halfway line. They defend quite deeply because they know they've got pace on the counter-attack. The only thing he changes slightly is the position of Rodrigo and Vinicius Junior. Sometimes he'll play Vinicius Junior out on the left-hand side and Rodrigo through the middle. And then on other occasions he'll play him as a front two. Then he'll put Vinicius Junior as the main centre forward and Rodrigo out to the left-hand side. And he also uses Jude Bellingham in a different way on occasions, where although everyone said he's the number 10, when they've got the ball, he's the number 10. He comes in from the left-hand side to be a number 10. When they don't have the ball, he quite often asks him to go back out to be the sort of left-sided midfield player to stop the opposition's fullback coming across.
Which is what Toni Kroos used to do.
That all came about because they lost to Atletico Madrid when they were playing with the diamond in midfield. The Atletico fullback kept on getting forward and getting crosses into the box, and they didn't defend it well, and they lost the game. And Ancelotti after that said, we can't play with this shape when we haven't got the ball. And he went to say to Bellingham, you've got to get yourself out there to a certain area to stop crosses coming into the box. And that's what he changes every slow off.
So it's interesting with the front two, because obviously like they're both true. If you believe in natural positions, they're both natural left wingers who prefer playing on the left-hand side. Rodrigo is considered the lesser player of the two, so he draws a short end of the stick. But we've seen them switch and alternate so many times. Rodrigo gave an interview on Sky Italia where he says, like, sometimes he'll tell us, like, in the dressing room half an hour before, okay, the first half hour, like, Vini, you're through the middle, and Rodrigo, you're on the left. Like, it's not something, he wants to get in their head the idea that you guys are doing both.
Yeah,
and you'll switch seamlessly. We're not going to prepare a specific game plan. This is just going to be what you do.
They've done so much work over the course of the season with their shape and how it just evolves so easily for them. We talked about Carvajal. Carvajal almost plays like a right winger at times. Toni Kroos will play, I would say, 20 passes over 30 yards from his sort of inside left position out to Carvajal, where Valverde's made runs inside. And when it goes to Carvajal, he'll play first-time balls into the box and they get players run onto it. They know exactly what they're doing all over the pitch. They're a team that have been well coached. They're a team that are confident in the manager, confident in their tactics, and it will just flow naturally for them.
Courtois been back for 4 games, no issue there. You don't have any.
He's been brilliant, actually.
More than 4 games.
He's been brilliant in the games. There was one in particular where it was the perfect game for Real Madrid. They won, I think, 4-0, and he made 4 or 5 brilliant saves. So I've got no issue with him coming into the side at all.
Even though Sorloth scored 4 goals against him? The only living Sorloth in captivity?
Yes, but that wasn't Courtois in goal then, I don't think.
Oh, wasn't it?
No, I think Lunin played in that one.
Oh, well, like Lunin. Okay, well, I stand corrected. But I mean, I think that's the only game Lunin played outside of the Champions League since Courtois been back. What I find, more broadly beyond the tactical stuff, in terms of storylines, right? There's the Toni Kroos announcing that he's going to leave or he's going to retire after the Euros. This will be his final game for Real Madrid. In your experience, do professionals, footballers at that level, do they think about this when they're out on the pitch? Was Zinedine Zidane thinking that this is my last ever game as a professional when he entered the Matrix and headbutted him and cost his team the World Cup?
I couldn't really ask that question because, from my own experience, I didn't know it was going to be my last game. I got injured, so never played again.
No, but you've coached players and stuff.
Yeah. He'll want to put in obviously a top class performance, but
presumably
he wants to do that. He does that every game.
So this is not a thing.
This isn't a thing for him. He's a player that's got a great passing range. He knows how to find space. He works well with the left back. Mendy goes forward, and he'll just sit in there to find space on the ball. If Camavinga's not doing particularly well in central midfield, but giving the ball away cheaply, he'll push Camavinga out the way. He'll go and play in the holding midfield role to get on the ball, not to be a good defensive player, but to get on the ball and make things happen. He knows how to find space. He knows where to pick a pass. He'll take most of the set plays. He's an outstanding player. He might not play the full 90 minutes, or if they goes to extra time, but because that's when Modric comes on and takes his place.
I was going to ask about Modric because earlier in the season, there was Modric. He's not going to play Modric and Kroos together from the start because they're both old.
Yeah.
Modric not too happy by it about that. There were stories and so on. He's out of contract as well, incidentally. But I thought in the last 3-4 months of the season, he said Modric kind of became a super sub and really got into the idea of almost being like the spark plug off the bench. Because I'll tell you what, if he plays 90 minutes, maybe whatever, he's extremely fit, but he turns 39 in September. But the galvanizing effect, the energy he brings when he's coming on for the last half hour is pretty remarkable. If it's a close game like this, at some point, and you feel that you need to bring in Modric,
it means Dortmund are doing well at the time.
Okay, let's say it's 0-0.
Yep.
Hour gone.
Yep.
If you're Carletto, do you take off Kroos to bring on Modric, or do you bring on Modric or somebody else? Bearing in mind that Modric and Kroos have very rarely played together for extended periods.
I think it's a straight swap. He takes off Modric.
You cannot have both on the field at the same time.
He doesn't have them on the same field, not just because they're age, but they're not athletic anymore. Modric is athletic going forward, but he can't recover. Right. And Toni Kroos isn't a great defensive player because he can't get around the field. So it's a massive gamble to put him on. But if you look at the two games where he changed it, I mean, he's done it in La Liga. Yeah. But Man City, when they were trailing at home, he came on and just changed one or two things. And the game against Bayern Munich, when he came on, they were down 1-0 in the game, I think. He came on and changed the game. So Modric is a key player for Ancelotti if things aren't going well. And if they are going very well and they're winning 2 and 3, he'll take Modric off for a standing ovation in his last game and he'll bring Modric on.
I'm gonna go out with my personal appeals. I'm obsessed with polarization and resource inequality and everything like that, and how like the rich and the 1%ers just get richer and richer. What I find remarkable is Borussia Dortmund. They have the second or first highest average attendance in all of Europe. They're the second biggest team in Germany, second biggest team in the biggest economy in Europe. They are a legit heavyweight, top 10, top 12 team. Yeah. And yet, if we look at this team, right, take out Kobel, who I think is fantastic. You're talking, I'm really not making fun of these players, but I kind of am. Rierson, who's a guy who comes from Union Berlin.
A good player. A good player.
Yeah.
He's
writing home about him, right?
Yeah.
Schlotterbeck, okay, fine. Big signing. Maybe hasn't hit the heights, but there's still time, right? Hummels, at his age, is a guy who's, unwanted by Bayern Munich, and that's why he ends up back at Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah, 2018, he was left out the Germany squad, never to play again.
And he's out of the Germany squad again. And a bit bitter about it. Ian Maatsen, phenomenal player, a guy on loan.
Yeah.
Marcel Sabitzer, a guy on loan and also unwanted by Bayern Munich. Emre Can, also unwanted by, he's unwanted by Bayern. He moved around again, but older player, right?
Yeah.
Older player, been around, come back to the Bundesliga. Nobody's writing home about him, right? Julian Brandt was the guy who was supposed to leave so many times, never did, stuck around.
Had his best season for quite some while, but he's still unpredictable. You couldn't hang your hat on him.
Jadon Sancho, unwanted by Manchester United. Karim Adeyemi, a guy who went nearly a year without scoring and was frankly terrible and nowhere near the first squad for a long time. And Nicholas Füllkrug, who of course was unwanted by everybody until they say like, oh look, when he was like 29, they're like, oh look, maybe he can play a little bit, right? I wonder, does this give you an extra motivation? Is this something you as a coach would say, guys, you guys were great players, are great players, can be great players, but the common thread on this team is most of us are people who are either thought to be too old or not good enough.
I'm not sure you tell the players that.
You would not say that. You would not. I don't know, but we see it in films, right? I
Yeah, no.
The coach says they're like, nobody believes in you, but I do. Like, these are all guys who've been at bigger clubs, had bigger opportunities, and have been said, nah, we don't want you.
Well, if you read some of what Mats Hummels has said, Mats Hummels said in 2 or 3 games that they showed inferiority complex by the coach, by saying we're going to defend deeper and Stuttgart are going to be better on the ball than us, and he didn't like it, and the players didn't like it. So I'm not sure you say that to the players. It's
not a motivational
it's
tool.
It's not a motivational tool.
It works in Hollywood films. That's why I asked.
Of course
right?
it does, yeah.
All right. Final thing, percentages?
I would say 75% win for Real Madrid.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little lower. I'll say 70%, but there's no question. They are overwhelming favorites. All right, enough Champions League final. How about some quick hits?
Let's do it, Gabs.
Hansi Flick has been confirmed as Barcelona's new boss, replacing Xavi. Robbo, he won a Champions League with Bayern, but also got bounced out in the group stage when he was Germany boss in the 2022 World Cup. And I believe he is the only Germany boss in history who's actually been sacked.
Yes.
But do you like this appointment?
I liked him at Bayern Munich. He came in and he took over.
You got to give me more. You can say, I liked him when he was winning the Champions League. I don't like him when he gets sacked.
The style of football he played was excellent. You know, they played a very high line. It was not innovative, but they played it to a certain degree, and they were unplayable at times. They pressed high up the field. They played some attacking football. They looked a really good side. It didn't work with Germany, maybe because he didn't have quite so much time with the players on a daily basis.
And he'll have more time at Barcelona.
He'll have more time at Barcelona because he'll be trying to make sure they get the tactics absolutely right.
Do you think this set of players that they have, I mean, because I think about that Bayern team, right? You had flying wingers, Coleman, Gnabry. You had a right back like Kimmich, who's obviously very different from Jules Koundé. Does he have the right set of players to sort of replicate what he did at Bayern in 2020? Or will he have to, like good coaches do, adapt and actually play differently from the way Bayern did?
I think you have to adapt differently to that style that you played then, because a lot of people have followed it and found that you can be counter-attacked and played over the top. So he'll have a similar style, but not quite as aggressive as that. And I think he has got the players there to do it. Barcelona have got better players than people give him credit for.
I think they have better players, but just different skill sets.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Koundé's bad, but Koundé can't pass like Kimmich. He doesn't attack like a right back, right?
But at times they play with a back three because he comes across and then the left back goes for Cancelo, as it has been. Now, Olympiacos became the first Greek team in history to win a European trophy, beating Fiorentina 1-0 in the Europa Conference League final. Gab, Mendilibar does it again.
That's right. The fearless Mendilibar, after winning the Europa League last year, wins the Conference League. I'd ask, are you the new Unai Emery? If not for the fact that I believe he's older than Unai Emery, so he's not the new anything. I think it was a good job. It was a cagey game. Fiorentina liked to attack, but they were sloppy. They were nowhere near as incisive as they could have been. Nico had I thought one of his worst games of the season. And I think in the end, Olympiacos deserved it. They hung in there. Ayoub El Kabi, who actually was a Conference League leading scorer, popping up with a winner deep in injury time. And people make fun of the Conference League, how funny. But for the people who were there on the night, and
great night.
I think it's actually been a really, really good competition. Mikel Arteta's deal with Arsenal expires in June 2025. Robbo, reportedly, formal contract talks will start soon. And reportedly, he wants a big bump on the $9 million he currently earns. Guardiola's on $20 million. He's not going to get that, but somewhere in between, perhaps. Should Gunners be worried that why is this taking so long? Is it a big deal if he?
I don't think there's any worries for Arsenal fans. I think he will sign. He will sign for a lot more money. The club want to keep him. The fans at the moment love him. The players seem to love him. Everything's going Arsenal's way. I know they didn't win the title, but they're a much improved side. They're a much improved club, and he's been a big part of that. So I think
could be a job opening at his old club, Manchester City, and just when his contract ends.
I still think he'll be at Arsenal.
I think so too, but I'm just surprised they've left it so late. That's it.
A lot of reports out there suggest Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva and Ederson could all be moving out this summer. Gab, you and Mark Oldham just published a review of Manchester City's squad. What's your take on this?
So the Ederson thing seems to be by a rule change in the Saudi Pro League that you could not have goalkeepers. So people assume Saudis will come. Like if I were Ederson's agent, that's what I would say. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He wants a new deal. So of course, you wave the Saudi banner and say, oh. The other two are slightly different. De Bruyne's got a year left. Bernardo Silva has 2 years left. I think the club are going to be very cagey about giving them extensions now. Maybe might be later. Bernardo Silva's been linked with moves, I feel like, every summer. Pep said, I'm not going to force anybody to stay. But bubbling in the background is the fact that Pep Guardiola's contract, as I just mentioned, also up in June 2025. I think this is a completely different situation in the sense that I would have thought that Pep has earned the right to say, hey, I want to walk out tomorrow. And you say, thank you, Pep. Thanks for everything. Yeah. Goodbye. Or I want to stay another 10 years. And you say, thank you, Pep. You're staying another 10 years. That said, our colleague Rob Dawson reporting today that the club would like an answer by Christmas. Now, it's reasonable, but equally, I think if Pep's not prepared to give an answer by Christmas, for whatever reason, private life, whatever, if you're Manchester City, you sit and you wait until the last possible day, right, to keep Pep?
I would say so. He's the best manager in the world. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, so you should keep him.
And the reset for whoever has to follow in Pep's footsteps is going to be huge. Robbo, we're not done. How about some more quick hits? Chelsea have the new boss, and by all accounts, it's Leicester City's Enzo Maresca. Rob, you watch much more of the championship than I do. What should fans expect?
When they play well, they play a mixture of...
Well, they won the league. Presumably they played relatively
well.
They
had a dodgy spell. And they had a wobble. Remember, he didn't do particularly well at Parma. But the Leicester side, if the opposition sit off them, they'll play out from the back and they try and play into midfield and play little balls around the corner. They're quite an expansive side. They like to have the inverted fullback coming in. And we've heard him talk about it because he likes it as a defensive setup so that when they are playing forward, they've got an extra player in that central midfield. It's whether they've got the players to play, because he's been with Pep Guardiola twice. And everybody that's been with Pep Guardiola becomes a disciple of his style of football. So if they play it well, it'll be something like Man City. If they play it poorly, they could find themselves in trouble.
Is this group of players, are they suited to playing that kind of style?
I think Chelsea's players are. Yeah, I think they've got good enough players. I just don't think they've worked quite well enough this season.
I was just wondering because the wingers seem very direct to me, more so than the kind of wide players that Pep has.
Yeah, but they're certainly they're dynamic, so they can make it work in terms of the formation. Gab Marcotti will reportedly be handed a 5-year contract. That's quite a long time.
I think it's near impressive. Who the hell gets 5-year contracts? I mean, like, not even like Klopp. Maybe Klopp or Pep or Sir Alex. But what this tells to me is one of two things. Either this is just an incredibly stupid move, or more likely, that 5-year contract. Not really a 5-year contract. 5-year contract, yeah, it's a 5-year contract, but after 1 year, after 2 years, we have a review. There's a break clause. If you don't see out your 5-year contract, we're not going to pay off the rest of the contract. We only pay a set amount, and you sign up to it. And you just tell people it's a 5-year contract because technically it may be. That's my only explanation. When people do really stupid things,
that happens with most managers. It's a 5-year contract, but
no manager gets a 5-year contract.
If we sack you, you get 1 year or something like that.
Yeah, but most managers don't get 5-year contracts. No. So it's not really a 5-year contract, right?
No.
So, I wouldn't read too much into it. But it just, because also if he does well after 2 years, he's going to come knocking, right? You presume?
Yes.
So, Bayern have a new boss too. Vincent Kompany has been confirmed. Robbo, I have my views on this, and it doesn't just have to do with the fact that 7 different coaches turned down the job. I actually like him. But what's your take?
It's an interesting one because not too many managers would get a top-class job having just got a team relegated. But they're not going on this season, they're going on the previous season where Vincent Kompany did a very good job. They played a good style of football, they had a limited budget. He'll have a bigger budget at Bayern Munich. They played decent football. I think he's a manager that would probably get on with the hierarchy, which is a big thing at Bayern Munich. Will he be good? I'm not sure.
But he has the Pep rubber stamp. He's another one. You know what? Pep could be like those mafia dons where he gets like a taste. He gets a kickback from everybody else. Like, you got to kick 10% of your salary up to me because I made you. Between Arteta, this guy. I'm surprised Arteta hasn't shaved. I'm surprised Arteta hasn't shaved his head to look more like Pep. I guess he wants to be his own man now. But
Maresca looks like him, so what about Antonio Conte edges closer to signing for Napoli. Gab, it looks like there will be a major revamp there, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there's so much detail coming out. Napoli have a new director of football, Giovanni Manna, who was at Juventus. Again, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they're saying they want 10 players out, they want 8 players in, presumably the 8 guys coming in cheaper than the 10 guys going out. Hopefully, if you're a Napoli fan, among them aren't Osimhen, Kvaratskhelia, Di Lorenzo. There are other stars. Di Lorenzo already supposedly been linked. Conte apparently not a huge fan. I don't know if that's true. But they still haven't worked out Conte's contract. They're like, oh yeah, coming up. They're talking a 3-year deal for an enormous amount of money, 8 million euros net, which again works out to about 13 million pounds a year gross, which I think is the amount of money Arteta would be very happy with. Reportedly, Conte has a break clause where he can walk away anytime. I'll tell you what, again, this goes back to the Maresca 5 years. When you hear stuff like this, it doesn't make sense. It's either because the people signing the contracts are morons, or more likely they're not morons. There's stuff that you don't know. So if Conte can break the contract anytime, I'm sure De Laurentiis has, because he's too smart, has some clause in there where he's like, well, maybe we can break the contract anytime, as well. So I don't know.
He's got a history of sort of falling out with people at the top, hasn't he?
Yeah, and so does the guy at the top, De Laurentiis, right? So I don't know. I'm skeptical, but it's going to be exciting. What can I tell you? Manchester United are conducting their review into the manager's job. We don't know yet if Erik ten Hag is staying, but if there is a change, there are what some people are calling the Ratcliffe rules. Now, these are criteria for the new boss, and tell me if you're on board with these, right? So the new coach has to follow technical director Jason Wilcox's style of play. Mm-hmm. Every year, they will sign 5 under 25 players so that there is a natural turnover of the squad, and you don't get stuck with all these old Casemiros. And also, when the manager wants a player, he identifies the area of the pitch or the characteristics, but he doesn't get to name the player. The club then go away and say, oh, you want a right back who does this, that, and that. Here are 3 names. Who do you like? Rank them in order, and then we'll see if they're available. This is completely different from the days when Sir Alex Ferguson was omnipotent, right?
So you said 3 things there. The only one I disagree with is the director Jason Wilcox's style of play. Jason Wilcox should have the style of play up until the first team. Once you've got a manager, a head coach in at the first team, he's got to dictate the style of play that the first team use.
You think he's going to know better than Jason Wilcox?
Yeah, but Jason Wilcox, he's got... So your progression of players coming into the side, they have to have a certain style of football, and then they have to be good enough at lots of things so the manager, the head coach, can adapt their style accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's a bit chicken and egg. I think Jason Wilcox will presumably have a hand in hiring the new manager, if there's a new manager. So he's going to bring in somebody whose style of play naturally fits his own vision. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the academy's job is to complement the first team. But Wilcox, by the way, another Pep Guardiola guy. They're everywhere.
Yeah. Now, L'Equipe report that Kylian Mbappe and Paris Saint-Germain could go to court. Gab, what's this all about?
So this is a story which to me makes no sense. Julian explained it to me. I don't know. My feelings.
He's Julian now, is he?
What?
He's Julian now, is he?
Julien. Jules. Look, my thoughts on lawyers and courts and so on. I think this to me seems stupid. It seems really stupid. I don't see how they have a leg to stand on. But apparently now, if you remember, last summer, Mbappe said, or maybe it was just after the summer, Mbappe said, oh, by the way, that 3-year deal I signed? It wasn't really a 3-year deal. It was 2 years plus an option for a 3rd year. Yeah, I'm not going to take up that option for the 3rd deal, for the 3rd season. That was then got the period from the club. Nasser Al-Khelaifi got upset. If you remember, Mbappe disappeared from the team. Looked like he was going to be training with on his own for a while. And then apparently they reached out a deal where Mbappe could come back, but supposedly he agreed to forego the 80 million euro bonus that was due to him in December and another 80 million euro bonus that's due to him in the summer. According to L'Equipe, what's happened is Mbappe now wants that money. And so what the club have done is not only are they not going to give him that money, they've frozen those payments. They also froze the wages that were due to him in August, which is about 6 million euros because Mbappe makes about 72 million euros a year, which is just an enormous number.
He's not going to be short money, is he?
So in the end, there's 166 million euros at stake here. And the lawyers are arguing over it. I mean,
Well, if they argue it for long enough, they'll get the money, won't they, the lawyers?
Yeah, exactly. I think the lawyers will end up with the bulk of it. I mean, look, normally I would say whatever, but this comes from L'Équipe. L'Équipe is a credible source. You know, you would assume that they've been briefed by both sides, and you would assume that certainly the story is accurate. I find it absolutely extraordinary. I found it extraordinary when Paris Saint-Germain said, you're not going to take the extra year option? Fine. Well, then you don't get to train with the first team. I mean, surely that's illegal under labor law.
Yeah.
I find it ridiculous that they would have even agreed a deal where they're going to pay him $160 million in loyalty bonuses, because those numbers are just so out of whack with reality. Yeah. I find it weird that he makes $72 million a year. That's a lot of money. Everything about this is bizarro world, and I still don't understand it. So I suspect there's something I don't know. So,
well, that's the news. Something you don't know.
Something I definitely don't know. I will ask Jules.
Yeah, okay. Oh, dear.
Robbo, traditionally, because this country loves its stereotypes, the north of England is the cradle of English football, where it all began, where most clubs have won most titles, where all the giants are. And yet, 5 seasons, next season, there will only be 5 teams from up north in the Premier League. I can name them for you. Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool, Everton, for now, and Newcastle.
Not small clubs.
Not small clubs, but it's 5 out of 20. That kind of northern middle class of the Burnleys and the Blackburns and the Sunderlands and the Leedses and the Sheffields, both United and Wednesday, the whole cities. I don't know. It seems like a whole part of the country, compared to where they were, are missing out.
Does it suggest that there's more money? Well, there is more money in the south in general terms. Does it mean more people are investing in the clubs in the south?
I'm asking you, does it feel different? Let me ask you this. When you played or coached, and you're like, oh, look, we're playing Burnley as opposed to we're playing Gillingham, did it feel different? Is it just a travel time, and in the end, once you cross the pitch, there's not that much of a difference between the fans?
There was no difference whatsoever.
Okay, so this is all kind of not.
It's
just a weird geographical freak of nature. And next season, when Leeds come up, when Burnley come back up, when Sheffield United, probably not. It's not going to be a thing anymore.
It probably means something to do with the budget. That's what it usually means.
Exactly. Tottenham Hotspur have extended Timo Werner's loan for another season, and they can still make it permanent if they pay. I think it's something like 20 million euros. Good decision, Robbo? You like this?
It's okay. Yes, he's a decent player. He obviously didn't do particularly well at Chelsea. He didn't do particularly well when he went back to the Bundesliga. But I thought he played okay for Tottenham on the left-hand side, making Rose runs. He looked a goal threat. He looked as though he had that pace back. And I'm sure he'll get better next season. He
looks a goal threat more than a goal scorer. But Ange got to see him up close. He gets to the side. I want to keep him.
Yeah.
It's a good solution for everyone.
Yep. Now, already this summer, we've had Vincent Kompany at Bayern, Maresca at Chelsea, McKenna linked to Manchester United. Gab, is there a trend towards clubs going for younger, less experienced managers?
I think there definitely is. And if you wind it backwards even a year or two, obviously you have Xavi at Barcelona, you have Arteta at Arsenal. I think
is it not a gamble?
I think it is a gamble. I think what's happening is clubs are relying more on the idea of partly it's analytics, partly it's nerds, partly it's having a director of football who really sets the tone for the club, and they want to be in charge of that. They don't want to get stung. There's less of a belief in like the kind of superstar manager with mystical powers. I think clubs realize that there's one Klopp, there's one Pep, there's one Ancelotti. And so you're seeing a lot of very big name managers. Look, Max Allegri, when he left Juve before he came back, he was out on the street for 2 years. He was actively searching for jobs. People weren't going for him. The reason Antonio Conte, we talked about him before, the reason he's likely going to go to Napoli, it's not like, he loves the food. It's because after he left Inter, he's on the sidelines, his agents, the people who look after him, did the rounds around Europe. Are you interested in Antonio Conte? And the answer was no. And he can't get in Italy, obviously he's burned.
He didn't help himself at Tottenham, did he?
But it's not because they look at Tottenham. They look at, I think, even when he wins, because obviously he was successful at Inter. They look at that. I want a guy who I can control. I want a guy who knows that he's an employee. I want a guy who, the media and everybody aren't going to credit with everything and say, put him in charge of everything. I don't. the Sir Alex Fergusons are really, really rare. And even Ancelotti, actually, we mentioned before, who has that gravitas, he's at a club where he's not in charge. I mean, no. So I think that is most definitely the trend. I mean, you could argue even Liverpool going for Arne Slot, good upcoming manager, but if they were like, oh, let's get the experienced guy, it would be Tuchel, would have been Pochettino, it would have been somebody like that. So I think these are all the factors that are prompting clubs to, there's definitely a trend where the power is moving away from the coaches and more towards the clubs, and clubs want coaches who are cheaper, who they can control a little more. I mean, look, even your pal Jose Mourinho, right? When I say this in the nicest possible way with Roma, if you look at it's almost like a downward spiral, despite the fact that Roma fans loved him. He reached 2 European finals and so on. It's not like Mourinho's on the market this summer. It's not like he's being linked with the Liverpool job or these other big jobs. I think people are moving away from the idea that,
quite rightly so.
Because you don't think
you don't want people that think they're in charge of the club. You're the head coach. You look at the first team, but once they start using the press to try and do all sorts of things, which Mourinho has done in the past, it's not a good thing for the club.
Well, we mentioned this before when we were going through the United's rules for the new manager, right? Or the principles that they want. Sir Alex's head would explode if he read them. Maybe he did read them and his head has exploded or maybe he understands, because Alex Ferguson's a smart guy, that football has changed from his day. And maybe he even says, hey, I could do it because I'm special. Most of these guys aren't.
No.
So I think that is definitely, I think at some point we're just going to stop calling them managers, just call them coaches.
Yeah, that's what they are.
Julian Alvarez has reportedly been cleared by Manchester City to play in the Olympics for Argentina and of course he's also going to play for Argentina in the Copa America. Now, for those who don't know, in the Olympics, it's an under-23 competition, but you're allowed 3 overage players. So the players kind of have to choose to be in it. Robbo, City reportedly have said, oh, yeah, go ahead, do it. Is this a smart move?
Not really. I mean,
unless they know they're getting another striker.
Of course. One, I think, is okay. But to play in 2 tournaments in the summer, it's madness, because your players need recovery time. They need not only physically but mentally recovery time. He's not going to get that. And does he need to play in both of them? I would say not. It's
if you want to win both of them,
particularly the Olympics, where he has to actually sort of say, I want to play in it. I think it's the wrong thing for Man City to do. I'd allow him to play in one, but not both.
Mbappe, of course, wants to play in both as well. Apparently, that's going to be a sticking point with Real Madrid.
Will he, though?
I would actually argue that with Mbappe it wouldn't be that big a deal, because you can ease Mbappe in and start getting him regular minutes. If he plays the Euros, wins the Euros with France, goes to the Olympics, wins the Olympics with France, and then he goes to Madrid and says, hey guys, I need 3 weeks off. Real Madrid can he just say, take 3 weeks off, then come back, then train slowly and rest up, and we'll get you on the pitch in October. They have other guys who can do what Mbappe does at Real Madrid.
But when you're going to be paid so much money and you go to a new club, you want to start off straight away.
Yeah, a normal person would. Yeah. I don't know how Mbappe views it or how Real Madrid view him. With City, though, I think the difference is, if something happens to, Holland will be well rested because Norway, of course, don't qualify for anything. But say Holland picks up an injury, all of a sudden, if there's no Holland and there's,
not much backup,
tired, gimpy Alvarez, they're so good. You can play Foden at center forward. You'll probably be better than anybody else. I do wonder. I wonder if this kind of foreshadows that maybe they are bringing in somebody else who can play at center forward just to have the other alternatives.
Now, Chelsea's women's team have appointed Sonia Bompasta to replace Emma Hayes, who will be joining the US women's national side. Gab, good choice?
So this has just been confirmed. Jules reported this a long time ago. She was very successful at Lyon. Lyon, of course, who reached the Women's Champions League final this year. She also won the Champions League final as coach of Lyon. She won the last 3 titles there. She was a very good footballer. She was a midfielder. Put all these things together, Emma Hayes won't be replaced. She's not going to have a replacement. She'll have a successer.
Yes.
So I guess they went out to the market and
the best one they could get.
Got somebody who may well be the best person available, and also they get it from another top club. So you're also kind of weakening a rival, forcing a rival to go and retrench somewhat. The League Cup will be revamped with new rules stopping teams competing in Europe from facing each other in the early rounds. Essentially, it's a seeding system. Robbo, I really don't care about this because I really don't care about the League Cup. It's funny because in the press release when they announced this, they said, "Oh, it's going to be because of the expanded Champions League, and we're concerned about player welfare because they'll get tired." In reality, this is all nonsense. This is just to keep
playing against each other make them more tired than playing against anybody else.
Supposedly, I know. I think what they don't want is Manchester City play Arsenal in one of these early nonsense rounds of the League Cup.
But they usually don't come in until later on in the.
No, not the first round. I mean the first round where they come in, whatever it is, right? And you're playing the super scrubs, right? Scott Carson is in goal for Manchester City, and Arteta himself is playing sweeper at the other team because it's all the no names, and then you lose one of the two big guns. So the thinking is by keeping them separate, it's more likely the more big teams will advance, and then we can go and charge more money for.
So they're looking after themselves, then. That's what you're saying.
You're trying to maximize the profit of the competition. Who, by the way,
not players' welfare.
No, they don't. I genuinely think they could care less about that. Fundamentally, this is one of my many reasons I have a problem with the League Cup, is why the League Cup was created.
Go on. It was in about 1960s?
It was late 50s, early 60s. It was created because it can get dark early in winter. People started realizing that, especially in this country, especially up north. So they said, let's start installing floodlights so that, we can light it up. And then if we have floodlights, we can play football in the evenings. This is back in the day when people only played at
3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, yeah.
So, how are we going to fill this? Let's invent, to help pay for all these floodlights we're putting in, let's invent a competition out of whole cloth so that we can make money, charge them. And this way we get use out of our floodlights, and then we can pay off the floodlights. This is why, and it's still like that. It's still purely competition about money. Look,
is this the competition that we cover so nicely on ESPN?
Yeah, I don't. But no, look, it's still football. We'll still watch football. And I think, to be fair to the competition, once it gets into the semifinals, those are competitive matches. And look, the fact that Manchester City won it 1 million times shows you that, the best teams do eventually win it. So I guess that's a good thing. But for me, that this hypocrisy of saying, "Oh, look, it's about the player welfare." You could care less.
Nobody cares about the player welfare in the hierarchy. Now, Lionel Messi scores for Atlanta United.
No, come on. You can't skip over my John Textor.
Oh, sorry. You and Jules love your John Textor stories. You must be delighted that he's reportedly considering a move to acquire Everton.
I absolutely love this story. I would love to have more.
I tried to just go over it,
So he's a part owner of Crystal Palace, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think it's an open secret, the guy running Crystal Palace, your mate, Steve Parish.
Hang on, I'm a mate of Mourinho, and now I'm a mate of Steve Parish.
You get all the good ones. They don't always see eye to eye, right?
Yes.
He's not. And so I think the thinking is he would sell his stake in Palace and then take total control of Everton. Good for Everton. Look, 1,000 times better than 777. Let's be very clear about that. I also think he has a very ambitious plan with all his his different properties around the world. It doesn't always work out because you see what's happening in Brazil, where he called everybody corrupt, and now he's got the lawsuit against the league and whatever. He generally believes in his multi-club ownership model. As you know, I'm generally very skeptical about these models and whether people can actually make them work. But yeah, if you're Everton, the reality is the situation is terrible. Yeah. So if your alternatives are 777, you've dodged that bullet. Farhad Moshiri, who he really is all his money, he really is a very wealthy man, and he's just mates with Alisher Usmanov, who sponsors the training ground, as one does. You're better off than having those guys. So yeah, at least Textor's accountable. Textor, by all accounts, is an honest person. So yeah, that's the positive. On the flip side, and Leon did much better after he sacked the manager and Pierre Sage came on and whatever.
Yeah.
So let's give Textor credit for that. You wonder why. Just leave it at that. Like I want to see John Textor in charge of a Premier League club. Just leave it.
See how they get on. Yeah.
Lionel Messi scores, but Atlanta United beat Inter Miami 3-1. Still, Robbo, 11 goals in 11 league appearances for Lionel Messi. It's fair to say he's coping okay with MLS. Does he even need, as some suggest, Angel Di Maria to join him too?
It'd be great if he did join him because Di Maria had a great season last year. He's still playing some very good football. Lionel Messi is going to score goals whether he's there or not, but it'd be great if they could combine with each other because that's a great combination. So why don't we get Angel Di Maria to go to MLS as well?
I mean, are you surprised a little bit? And maybe it's just a reflection of just the differences, but I ain't going to do that thing where you speak, since it can be no yin without a yang. But Messi and Cristiano have essentially scored a goal a game since leaving Europe. They're both older. They both went to radically different places. One hot and dry, the other one hot and humid. And he's make it seem so easy. It's just I didn't expect them to be this good, this old. Is it just because the Saudi Pro League and MLS are really far, far below even Ligue 1 or is that it?
They are, yeah. They're way below the level of, as you said, Liga, the Championship, I would say. So, but they're both exceptional players, and any really top class player that's still fit will still be a massive success in those leagues. And Di Maria would be a great success if he joined Lionel Messi.
It's good news for my man Olivier Giroud then.
Yes,
this season. There you go.
Giroud will score goals, no doubt about it. Now, Saudi Arabia have new rules in place allowing for more foreign players. Gab, will this be another summer of Saudi?
Yeah, so they expanded the number of foreign players each club can sign. It's now 10, although 2 of them have to be born in 2003 or later. So essentially, saying we're making allowance for young players. The other twist is that goalkeepers can now join as well. They thought that, I don't know, everybody would bring in foreign goalkeepers and then wouldn't be any good Saudi keepers left. I'm struck, all right, as you know, and regular listeners and all this, I was skeptical about how long this would last because, frankly, the public investment fund in Saudi Arabia aren't stupid, right? They're I mean, MBS isn't dumb. He's trying to create viable businesses, right? And a business that costs you an enormous amount of money and your attendances don't go up and nobody around the world particularly cares. You know, the only time we talk about the Saudi Pro League is if we talk about Cristiano, really, or Benzema being unhappy or Henderson coming back, but it's not a day-to-day thing. At some point, I think the plug will be pulled on this. Also because while you've had the 4 PIF funds spending a ton of money, and 1 or 2 others, you know, there's a lot of teams that just don't spend any money at all because guess what? They may be Saudi, but they're also running businesses. Nobody enjoys losing money. And they're also realizing that, hey, look, maybe I can spend 10 million, but if Al Nassr is going to spend 100 million, what's the point of me competing? I might as well spend 1 million, live between my means, live within my means, and do the best I can. So I don't think we're going to see this massive exodus to Saudi Arabia this summer. It could be totally wrong, but I think part of the evidence is it's late May, right? This time last year, there was talk of this one and that one and Neymar and Benzema and Milinkovic-Savic or whatever. Now, have you heard whispers other than people who are in contract talks talking about like, oh, look,
using the Saudis to up their contract. Yeah.
I know. There's 4 clubs that have serious amounts of money, but they only have so many salary slots, and all these guys who came signed multi-year deals, and I think they get stuck. Thiago Motta's move to Juventus moves 1 step closer. In fact, Fabrizio Romano says it's done. Robbo, do you like this? Or are you going to say this is going to be Andrea Pirlo Mark II?
No, I think this will be better because he's done well at Bologna. We've seen him do that. Whereas when Pirlo came in, he hadn't done him well anywhere. He came straight into the job. Thiago Motta seems more controlled on the side of the pitch than he was when he was playing. He was more ill-disciplined. He seems to be good tactically. I think we're talking about another good young manager coming into one of the big clubs. Allegri, for me, was very staid in his way, and Juventus were going nowhere. I think this is a very good move for Juventus.
Do you think, Motta known more for attacking, possession football, very progressive football. Yep. I don't think he takes as many risks as he did when he first started out in management. But I always remember.
Well, the higher up you go, the less risks you can take, because you're now, yes, you've got better players, but the risks, if you're taking risks at a big club, if they don't succeed, then you're going to come.
I remember when he was at Spezia and they go out and they're just chucking people forward, trying to blitz the other team, and they don't know what's hitting them, and that's getting you results. At Juve, obviously, it's harder to do, but it is a big mentality shift. But you're on board. You think
I'm on board. I think he's done a very good job with Bologna. I like the way they played this season.
And, no more safe pairs of hands for Juve. Now we go in a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, more United and Ratcliffe. He's reportedly written to all staff and told them he wants everyone to work from the office. He's also given them the option of taking voluntary redundancy, and it's estimated that 1/5 of the 1,100 person workforce might take it.
So a couple of things on this. So first of all, aren't you shocked that a football club, even one as big as Manchester United, has 1,100 people working for them? I saw a comparison. It's something like it's twice as many as City and Liverpool, where you're kind of regional comparables here. He's extremely annoyed that I guess this started as for many businesses with the pandemic. People started working from home, not coming into the office, to the point that many of them don't even have offices anymore. I guess he's old school. He thinks, and a lot of companies feel this way, you need to be in the office most of the week. They're supposedly even going to convert some of the hospitality at Old Trafford into offices because they don't have enough desks for everyone. This thing with the voluntary redundancy says, look, you've got 1 week. If you take this package now and resign, you'll get the bonus that we're going to pay out in September, and you can go away. Otherwise, stick around, see what happens. Maybe you don't make it to September. I don't know. But it certainly is a big overhaul. I don't, does it impact the football side? I think the club need to make money for Ratcliffe to spend it, because let's not forget, Ratcliffe isn't in charge of the money. The Glazers are. Ratcliffe is in charge of the football. To do most football things, you need money. Crystal Palace starlet Adam Wharton has been linked with Bayern Munich, and he's also been called up by Gareth Southgate. He's one of those youngsters, him, the goalkeeper, James Trafford. I've seen very little of him because he hasn't played very much. When he has played, he looks really, really accomplished.
Well, I haven't seen him too much at Crystal Palace, but I saw him at Blackburn on numerous occasions.
I wouldn't know about Blackburn because I don't believe they're a Premier League club.
No, they're not. But he played very well at Blackburn. That's why he got the move to Crystal Palace. He's a good.
Who's his comp? Is Kobe Mainoo his comp?
Yes, I suppose so. They're sort of playing the same position. He's not somebody that plays off the centre forward. He's someone who plays as a what I would call a proper midfield player. He can do both sides of the game. He can sit deeper at times. He can run forward when it's needed to. He's an up and down player, but with technical ability. He can see a pass. He's good with he can manipulate the ball around people. And
is he the 6 that Tuchel thinks was needed?
Maybe that's what's needed.
We joke about this, right? But if you're England, and presumably we know Gareth likes his. You never have too many central midfielders in there, but the reality is it's pretty slim pickings, because you have an outstanding one in Declan Rice.
Yep.
You have an unhappy one who hasn't even been called in Jordan Henderson, so he's not there. And then
one of the players that you did like has fallen out of favour at Man City, or never fell into favour at Man City.
Calvin Phillips.
He's completely out of the picture.
There's Kobe Mainoo. There's Conor Gallagher. You can play Jude Bellingham there, but then
you're taking away from what Ancelotti's produced at Real Madrid.
That's fine. People take it for granted that Mainoo's going to go. Is Wharton and Mainoo tight? Might Wharton actually also go if there's one more injury? Or is he too young?
I think he's not too young if you're good enough. I think Mainoo will probably get the nod ahead of him, because
I think he will. But what I'm saying is, when you think about it, I'm trying to imagine how many is he going to bring.
He won't take too many risks. So I think, you mentioned Conor Gallagher and people like that. Conor Gallagher is a safer bet than Wharton at the moment.
I think Gallagher's going.
Yeah.
But I watch a lot of Chelsea, as you know. Conor Gallagher isn't a 6,
No.
or he doesn't play as a 6 at Chelsea. He just gives you so much. I mean, he'll play anywhere. But he's a 10 who runs around.
Yeah,
he's
but
kind of like a
got two there.
blonde Park Ji-sung.
You've got Declan Rice and Mainu who can play that position. So
Right, and then who comes in off the bench for them? You see what I'm saying?
That's a tougher call.
That's why I'm wondering if he doesn't have an outside shot. You've got 26 players going. I mean, I think it would be remarkable. And for Bayern, certainly that is a position that they can use if he can bring
the whole of the midfield is where they look at, because he didn't like Goretzka, he didn't like Kimmich.
He likes Pavlovic. Well, first of all, he is gone.
Yeah,
Thomas Tuchel. So it depends what Kompany wants. But I presume if they've been linked, it's because, hey, Kompany says, hey, what about that Adam Morton kid? You've got Pavlovic, who is really, really good. But
did okay this season at times.
Yeah, but when you're projecting futures,
yeah,
Morton, why not?